Hey, I got a real nasty word for you. Addiction. Ranks right up there with the worst of them. When I first brought up the question, is game collecting an addiction? Some of you said I'm not addicted, I'm obsessed. Thank you very much. Yeah, using the word addiction implies a problem of some kind. Unless you're trying to use it ironically, I suppose, like saying you have a being awesome addiction. So, suffice it to say, video game collecting should only be considered an addiction if it's causing problems or seems negative. If it's causing something like financial ruin, then that's a clear red flag, although goodness knows all of our finances have taken a hit from collecting. Did you know bananas can cost as little as 19 cents a nanner or even lower? Just saying. But when it comes to game collecting causing problems, I want to talk about some of the less severe, yet more likely problems it could cause first. Biggest one that pops out to me is not playing games as much as you'd like to because you're always focused on buying the next game. Of course, probably any of us would say we don't get to play games as much as we'd like to, and some people might be perfectly happy to have at least some time taken away from playing games in favor of time spent collecting games because they enjoy it. Doing research on what games look good to you, finding something and then hunting it down, maybe you get a good deal. I mean, finding the next game to look forward to playing can be exciting. Maybe you find it out in the wild, or maybe it arrives in the mail, but when the moment comes that you're finally bringing that game into your home, the anticipation has reached the tipping point. Time to head to the game room to play it? Nope, back online to look for the next one. Yeah, collecting games to play just isn't quite the same if you skip the whole, actually playing it part. Oops, and if you do that often, double oops. If you're excited to play a game and then don't because of a compulsion you have to focus on collecting more games instead, that sure seems like addiction to me. But what if you're not excited to play a game, you're just excited to own a game? Hey, I'm not here to judge. Do what makes you happy. Simply owning things can be exciting for some people, right? My grandparents and their collection of decorative spoons sure would tell you so. I remember as a kid trying to actually use one, and let me tell you, there's a mistake I wasn't gonna make twice. If you collect a game, stick it on your shelf, and that's all you want out of it, then mission accomplished. You're home free, baby. I do find it interesting that the collecting mentality for video games is more of an adult thing than a kid thing. At least back in the 80s and 90s, that's how it was. Maybe that's because most of us didn't really have enough games that we could call them a collection. Yeah, let me just try to jazz this up real quick. Now we're talking, that's a collection. Back in the day, having a lot of games was just something that only lucky kids had, or to use a term that's not as nice, spoiled. It really wouldn't have taken many games to feel like you could call it a collection back then either. Compared to the size of some people's collections nowadays, something like Lucas's collection that we all revered would be considered weak sauce. Now, where are all the boxes and manuals and the little plastic baggies the cartridges came in? Come on, Lucas. And it's not like kids don't have any sort of desire to collect things. Remember Pogs? Maybe it's just that kids are cheapskates. Understandable, since they tend to not have much money. Goodness knows we tried to have our parents help us out, but that could often only get you so far. Even something as inexpensive as Pokemon cards had a lot of parents saying, I don't want to pay for this crap. So if we were on our own, we resorted to cheaper stuff. How about rocks found around the neighborhood? Yeah, the collecting mentality has always been there. We just couldn't afford to have it be video games. If we had been able to find video games lying around the neighborhood as kids, you better believe we would have collected them. Funny enough, now you actually can find video games lying around your neighborhood at people's yard sales. Well, at least for a while you could. It's gotten a little more difficult to find older games. Another thing commonly associated with addiction is that you can't stop doing it. Well, I got an idea of of how to quickly prove yourself innocent of that, just go a little while without collecting anything, maybe 2 or 3 months, to which some of you might be thinking, you know, going off of that, I got a good idea too. Screw you, buddy. Yeah, I suppose it's only a true test if you were trying to stop something because you felt like you had to, not just for the heck of it. If I stopped eating nanners for 3 months, that wouldn't prove anything, or would it? I also think that when identifying whether or not your game collecting should be classified as an addiction, a lot can be determined from what your inner dialogue sounds like. For example, have you ever been about to buy a game and then said to yourself, wait a second, why am I buying this? Sure, every purchase will have some degree of deliberation, but that seems like another red flag to me. And if you want to sweeten the deal even further, how about wondering why you're buying a game and then buying it anyway? Your brain tried to stop you, but you just powered on through. Perhaps one of the biggest things that gives video game collecting addiction a strong chance of becoming a reality is the sheer potential that comes with it. I mean, I don't know about you, but not once have I ever heard somebody say, yeah, you know what I'm addicted to? Computer mice. Most people have 1, maybe 2 or 3 if they're feeling wild. Actually, I have more than I realized. Maybe I'm addicted. But with video games, the sky is the limit. There's a lot of video games out there, and a lot of good ones. Where is the line supposed to be drawn? There's no rule book for this kind of thing. You're reading a fake there, buddy. Well, perhaps we've drawn the line ourselves, but with nobody to stop us, we just keep on crossing one line after the other. How many times have you said to yourself, okay, if I can just get these last few games, then I'll be set. Or I just need this one last console and then I'm good to go. And yet, always lurking is something else you end up wanting. It's tricky because the idea of having everything you want sounds great. Just try saying it real quick. I have everything I want. Feels good, right? Wouldn't that be the most ideal scenario? And yet, there's always another game there vying for your attention. You want to feel like you already have all the games you want, but you also want that game. So there you are, locked in a battle with yourself, one half of you versus the other half. And from my experience, even if one half of you won't cooperate, it seems like the other half will always find a way to get what it wants. I mean, we like video games, that's what we do. I don't think there's anything wrong with being really into what we like. If calling it an obsession instead of an addiction makes us feel better, then sure. Although replacing the word addiction with obsession isn't always quite so successful. But whatever you call it, main thing is to just identify any negativity coming from it, however major or minor that might be, and do what you can to resolve it so that the hobby can be as healthy as possible for you. And heck, you can probably guess what my advice will be. If collecting is causing issues, then focus on playing games instead. It doesn't cost a dime to play the games you already have. There's always something good to play. But with all that said, I came up with what I thought would be a fun question for this video. For those who can think of an example, describe a time you decided not to buy a game and it felt really good. Of course, be sure not to trash whatever game that is too much, as somebody else here probably really likes it. But I think this should make for some fun answers. So with that, leave your answers along with anything else you might have to say, and I will see ya in the next video.
Yeah, and he's talking about video games. He's